Hi, my name's Jim Likens. I guess you could call me a professional storyteller. I'm not the type of storyteller your kids might see at the library on a Saturday morning or in a classroom. I tell the story of people's lives. I've been doing work for Provident for several years now of telling the story of Provident to the community. And for this event, we wanted to share with you a story about what a difference Provident makes. But to do that, we would have had to have exposed the identity of a client. And at Provident, that's what they protect, the identity of their clients. Because you see, when a child is assaulted and insulted by abuse and molestation and death in the family and parents going to prison, there's a real strong possibility they stop growing up. Their emotional development comes to a pretty quick halt. So, since I'm a professional storyteller, I want to tell you a story. I know it very well because it's my story. And it starts out when I was young and I was known as Jimmy instead of Jim. I had a father who was a veteran of World War II, who came home from Europe, became incapacitated with mental illness, got 100% disability from the government, and became an alcoholic. And I want to begin with this. Did you ever buy any of these? When I was a kid, they were a nickel, not 99 cents. They really had good prizes in there back then, really. I'm sure some of you remember, they were great. And you know, Cracker Jacks had a slogan, advertising slogan for a while that said, "Some kids never grow up." And they don't. Provident helps them grow up. But on a summer night at 3517 South Independence in Oklahoma City in 1957, I stopped growing. And let me tell you what happened. My father had gotten my sister and I 2 little kittens. One was black and one was white. I love those little kittens. We didn't have air conditioning. Didn't have one of them window swamp coolers. All we had was a little oscillating fan. The coolest place in the house was on the floor, and I'd lay on the floor and I'd play with those kittens. I'd hug them, I'd kiss them, they'd scratch me and bite me, they'd chase strings, they'd chase feathers, they'd chase balls. And one night when I was sitting there playing with those kittens, my father, who had gone to the bar early, came home, and the way I heard the brake squeal in the driveway, I knew it'd be bad. And I thought, oh, I ought to take the kittens to the bedroom. But I didn't. When he came in the door, he wanted to see the little black one, and he picked it up and he held it in front of his face, and he started talking in a drunk baby talk, and I'm sure that kitten hated his stinking breath as much as I did, and the kitten reached out and scratched him on the nose. He reached up and he looked at the blood, and he was very paranoid, and he had guns all in the house, and he reached down between a cushion and he said, "Give me that other cat." And he took the other kitten from me, and he took this .22 pistol in his hand, and he walked out on the porch and he shot both of them in the head. Nothing was ever said about those kittens again in our family. I ran to my bedroom and I got under the covers and I pulled them over my head. The next morning I got up and I looked in the garbage can, I looked in the alley, I looked under the house, looked in the gutter, looked in the ditch across the road. Couldn't find my kitten. And I decided that I would never love anything again and I sure would not let my father see me cry. Little Jimmy stopped growing up. "35 years later, in a conversation with my mother, she told me the kittens didn't exist. She said, 'Jimmy, that story never happened. What are you talking about?' Now, can you imagine going through something like that, losing something you love, and then somebody telling you it didn't happen? I sent my mother a copy of the picture of my sister and me and her and the two little kittens. I'd found a therapist that dealt with children of alcoholics, and my grandmother died, and I went to Oklahoma City for the funeral. And before we went to the funeral home, I was going to go to my parents' house, and my therapist I was working with asked me, "Where are you going to stay?" And I said, "With my mother and father." And she said, "Jim, I don't think that's a good idea, because where you are in your rage, you very well might kill him, and I can't be responsible for that. And if you decide to do that, I can't be your therapist anymore." I said, "Nancy, it's been nice working with you, but I've got a debt to collect from that SOB, and I'm going to do it." And I went to Oklahoma City. We stopped by the house before we went to the funeral home to see Grandma for the first time. My father came out of his room and he sat in the living room. I said, "Hey, I've been seeing a therapist for being an adult child of an alcoholic, and I have a question that she wants me to ask you. Why did you hurt me so much?" And he told me the story of how his mother molested him for the first 14 years of his life. And as I listened to him, I thought to myself, I have come to collect a debt from a bankrupt man. I grew up maybe a little bit. A number of years later, I found myself 60 foot up in a tree and was going to commit suicide, and ended up in a stress center. And I found the type of people that work at Provident. People who help kids grow up. That's the story I want to really tell you, is what Provident has done for this community. And I've talked to people who have been through things like I have. And I really hope that none of you out there know what I'm talking about. I hope you say to yourself, things like that really don't happen, but they really do. And that's the great thing about Provident. They know they do, and they're prepared to deal with them. And they're prepared to help some kids grow up. I'm Jim Likens. Thanks for listening to my story.